What's up, folks? Today we are going to be going through a highly requested list from viewers in the comment section who have suggested time and time again for the last couple of weeks that I release a video detailing my favorite UFC fighters ever. Today is the day. I've been enjoying some time away from making content and uploading daily. I feel like this way I'm able to actually lock in whenever I am able to record. I've been training super hard. I'm not sure if any of my other locked in fellas who go to the gym have been noticing that the intensity of their workouts has been increasing as of late. There may be something in the air. I don't know. I've been getting it, man. I'm definitely increasing my power level on a weekly basis. But I've been doing a lot of lifting. I've been doing a lot of gaming. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I haven't been streaming just because and I've been trying to improve at Fortnite, get my weight up on the sticks. I feel like it's been working. Ashton, New York City field reviews. This is a summon to you guys. If you guys are watching the video right now, I'm ready to run again. We can get those trios going any day of the week. But considering my favorite fighters of all time, I used to think that WWE was real until I turned about 7 or 8 years old. I used to rock with Yoshi Tatsu. I don't even remember if he spoke English or not, but he would come out and that song would play, and I would just be getting lit with my brother in front of the TV. That boy used to always pull up and have me on some. Alright, so we're gonna have an honorable mention before I get into anybody else on the list. It's gonna be Eddie Alvarez. And before we pass go, I just want to let everybody know that this guy is 100% before my time. I didn't watch any of his fights live before he left the UFC, and I hardly cared enough to tune into his one championship performances. I did, however, watch him fight in Bare Knuckle FC, and I do respect him for the fact, whether it be money or some other motivations that he did have in taking those fights. He fought 3 times for BKFC. I remember his fight with Jeremy Stephens was also like, that was a banger, bro. The reason why I mention him as an honorable mention is for 3 specific reasons. He is my UFC 5 main in the 155-pound division, his alter ego. I think it was the night that he beat Rafael dos Anjos. He did beat Prime Rafael dos Anjos, which, that matters to me. He also has a win over Justin Gaethje. It was like a young Gaethje, but he still beat Gaethje, and he TKO'd him. Another reason is because of the content that he makes about fighting. I think that his gym is called Underground Kings. He has a cool nickname too, add that to the list. That MMA Instagram page is full of all types of knowledge pertaining to the sport. This guy has insider takes that he shares, technical breakdowns as well. Since he's a retired fighter, he'll pass on his knowledge to the next generation. He collabs with fighters like Corey Sandhagen who visit the gym. He does a bunch of crossover videos with other fighters too. Very knowledgeable. Obviously, he's an ex-world champion. He knows his stuff. Most people who are just getting into the sport and hear his name for the first time, it's going to be in conjunction with Conor McGregor and that beautiful combination that he did finish the fight with. Eddie Alvarez is so much more than that. And then the last thing I forgot to mention, his wife, bro. Every single Eddie Alvarez fight, if you listen closely, you don't even need to listen closely because it's right there. His wife is in the background screaming. I remember for like 2 weeks, like a month ago, people were on my Instagram feed talking about, "My Sinet's woman is going. There's no hope for any of us left." But dude, listen, every single ancestor before you has found a wife, and Eddie Alvarez's wife screams like a banshee for him, no matter who he's match made against and whatever his chances of winning are. Just take it easy. There's probably a shorty like that out there for all of us. We just gotta find her. But aside from that, wars with Chandler in Bellator, wars with Dustin Poirier. The first fight was ended due to an illegal knee that he threw, and then there was a no contest, and then they rematched and Dustin Poirier won. There were good fights, even though he did kind of get blistered in the rematch. Eddie Alvarez, he got them hands. That's the Underground King. So I'm going to put some respect on his name before we get into mentioning number 10, who is Daniel Santos. This is my boy. I think that he's one of the most valuable assets of Shootabox Diego Lima. We had established before that the 2 major Shootabox gyms are going to be Diego Lima, Charles Oliveira, Daniel Santos, Marco Tulio, rest in peace, Ian Machado Gary. And before it was like Daniel Lacerda and Felipe Dos Santos. And then there's also Shootabox Joao Felix, and that's going to be Melquizael Costa and Joe Anderson, Tubarão Brito, who are the front runners out of that gym. Considering Marco Tulio just got laid out in his last performance, that would make Daniel Santos then the 3 guy at the Diego Lima gym behind Charles Oliveira and Ian Gary. This guy's got another sick nickname. He calls himself Willie Cat. He's an aggressive striker that produces brutal KOs. And for all the fights that he doesn't knock people out in, mainly the things that he has on tape where he just is technically outclassing people for 3 rounds, it's his fights at bantamweight. As a featherweight, I think that his power is going to be more apparent we'll see more finishes on display from him in the future. But that's the thing that really is like alluring to me about this fighter, is we have such a limited amount of tape on him for all the fights that he did have scheduled. They mostly all ended up falling through because of injuries that he had been dealing with going into the fight week that forced him to withdraw. It's always him pulling out. Even his last fight took place at a catch weight, but I don't know, man. I just feel really good about this fighter. I think that it's going to be a while before he gets stopped. And if he does, it's going to be in a very explosive fight against a guy who's very high level. I think a fighter like this would even potentially match up well with a dude like Gian Silva on the basis of them both having crazy explosiveness, nasty finishing capabilities, and I'd even potentially give the edge to Daniel Santos on the basis of the fact that he probably has better grappling than Gian Silva. I had been known who this guy was for a very long time, while he was a bantamweight even, and while he was like recovering from these injuries, because Charles Oliveira, he's been known throughout the years to upload shoot-a-box footage of him hard sparring with guys who were lighter than him at the gym, and it would just be like him and some 135-pound dude throwing huge hooks inside of the pocket at each other at chest-to-chest range, and the caption of the video would be like stones and like the rock emoji. And it'd always be with a fighter like Daniel Santos, Daniel Lacerda, Felipe Dos Santos, like I'd been speaking on before. He perfectly embodies the spirit of this gym. These guys get into firefights. Daniel Santos is very comfortable fighting with a very high level of intensity, standing in the fire. We're going to need more on this guy as far as footage that he's produced in the UFC, but he's not very old. Comes from a very good stable, good people in his corner who are supporting his rise. And he's off of a KO win over a very hyped prospect in his last one, being that he knocked out Ju Seng Yu. So, I mean, this is one of those guys. I like this dude, man. And he's got a tattoo of a Yorkie on his chest. This guy's fire. Next, we have Stephen Thompson to discuss. And I said this before in another video. This was my first favorite fighter, and nothing ever is going to hit harder than rooting for your first favorite fighter. Whenever I was a casual, I was allured to this guy because of the fact that he was a karate man. This is a tried and true fact about fighting across the board. Karate is so cool to people who don't know anything about fighting. Just the idea of a karate practitioner and like that striking style. Karate is even cooler than kung fu to untrained people. And this is why people who don't know any better like to glaze Chuck Norris. Do you remember that entire string of memes from the early 2010s where they were like, Chuck Norris is the type of guy? It was basically the Tony Ferguson type of guy thread of jokes, but it was just involving Chuck Norris. Stephen Thompson was also my UFC 3 and 4 main. His stats in UFC 3 were freaking crazy, dude. He was like busted. Even in UFC 4, this guy was super strong. And I'd grown accustomed early on to watching him masterclass people in yearly performances before the entire division up the rankings got wise and was like, yeah, I'm just going to wrestle this guy and get the number next to his name by my name. And I mean, that's what they're supposed to do. But it did make me sad watching that string of Gilbert Burns, Bilal Muhammad, Shavkat Rakhmonov. And then, I mean, I guess there was Kevin Holland in the middle of all that. But then, what do we got? We had Bonfim most recently just wrestling this guy and winning decisions over him that way. Going through his old footage is something that, like, got me into the sport. His fights with Jake Ellenberger. This guy was, like, dapping people up after he would drop them, and then he would drop them again. I think it was, like, the Hendricks fight. He had, like, shaken Johnny's hand, and he threw a wheel kick afterwards, and that was, like, the finishing sequence. That might have been the Ellenberger one. Stephen Thompson was lit, and he was foundational for me as a new fan, developing my love for this sport that would grow to me being prompted to do something like start this YouTube channel. Next, we have Steve Garcia to discuss. This dude is just, he's so weird. I just love watching him fight. He kind of looks like, do you remember in that one SpongeBob episode with the hash-slinging slasher, whenever they were like, who's flickering the lights? And then they were like, Nosferatu. That was Steve Garcia standing in that stairwell, flickering the lights on and off. This dude has insane finishing instincts. He sees opportunities to produce a finish inside of the UFC octagon as soon as the first bell rings, which is ridiculous. I've never seen a guy who has this quality to be able to hunt finishes the way that he does against anyone. I wonder if it is down to him doing a lot of research and analyzing the styles of whoever he's matchmade with, because he sees openings in their defense without any type of setup, it seems like. It's ridiculous, dude. I don't know how he does it. He's very good at adapting on the fly, like he did against Melquizael Costa, who was desperately trying to grapple him through the first 5 minutes. He was unsuccessful in getting the fight to the ground. Steve Garcia had noticed that Melky was tired, and he started putting some really hard combos on Melquizael Costa that ended up breaking him. And he got the knockout without even doing too much for 5 minutes before then, just grappling defensively and making sure that Melquizael Costa was working about 3 times harder than he was up against the cage. Nurdin Becca, which is, I mean, that's a opponent that he actually did struggle with at certain points. He got dropped by Nurdin Becca. He was able to play guard, get back to his feet, get his bearings straight, and he ended up working the body since he wasn't able to score up top on Nurdin Becca's high guard. he just kept on ripping liver shots, and he ended up finishing the fight that way. Like I said before, in the Melquizael Costa fight, the shooter has some really nice defensive grappling. I pretty much never seen any attempts to grapple this guy work. This is paired with his lethality, with strikes that he throws from any range, kicks at distance, straight punches to the body up high, hooks on the inside, elbows that he throws, like downwards elbows from standing positions. This dude has a crazy strike arsenal. He fights like he hates his opponent. This dude he's cold. And with that, I think that he's complete enough to challenge for the 145-pound title, no matter who ends up with it after UFC 325, whether it be Volkanovski or Diego Lopez. I think that Steve Garcia is a bad matchup for both of those fighters. He was on a 5-finish streak before his fight with Calvin Kattar, and he was close to finishing that fight as he dropped Calvin Kattar in the 3rd round. He's on a 7-win streak as things are. His last loss was a knockout against Mahashate. Mahashate at 145 pounds was a massive featherweight. The same could also be said for Steve Garcia, but that one doesn't count. All 15 of his MMA fights are finishes that came in round 1 or 2, except for his debut, which went to decision. This is my guy. As far as talking about each division's dark horse, for 145 pounds, I think that this dude is going to grow in hype. All he needs to do is just win one more fight against a high-level contender at this division. And with a win over Yusuf Zalal, if he is able to finish that guy in the 1st round, then, I mean, Lerone Murphy, who? Movsar Evloev, who? Yair Rodriguez, who? I think he can do it. So no matter who he gets match made with up the rankings, I think that right now he is number 8 in the division. I'm going to be riding with my boy Steve Garcia. Next, we're going to be talking about Melquizael Costa, my number 7th favorite fighter. This is the front runner of Shootabox, Joao Emilio. Vitiligo adds to intimidation. I'd be freaked out to be across the cage with a guy, especially like whenever he was in like the earlier stages of his transformation into becoming completely albino. Seeing this man with like splotches of his natural complexion and then just completely bleached skin in other parts of his body encroaching on my position in the octagon, that would actually freak me out, dude. He's in the right profession because, I mean, this is like some uncanny valley stuff going on with him and his appearance. I know it doesn't mean to look so freaky, and in any other context, it would be wrong to draw attention to the fact that he does have physical differences from you and I, but I think it works for him in terms of fighting. It definitely adds to the intimidation factor of him being, I mean, a very high-level jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai practitioner. He's the front-runner of Shootabox, Joao Emilio. I can't think of another fighter that gym has produced that is higher level than Melquizael Costa. And he represents the mantle well. He's crazy versatile to be able to finish from anywhere in the cage. We're talking about submissions. He choked Andre Fili from guard with a guillotine, like full guard. And that's accreditable to him having an insane physicality and frame, 445 pounds. And that's manifested also in the ability to find finishes at range. Morgan Sherrier, he was able to knock that guy out with a head kick. Sherrier, who had never been finished in over 30 MMA fights in total. This guy is a staple of UFC Fight Night events, and he's funny on Instagram too. He's gotten hold of the Meta AI feature as well, so I mean, his Portuguese content gets automatically translated with English dubbing, so that like it looks like he's speaking English. He's working on his English too. He's done interviews with guys like Jaden Cable in the space, and he's speaking fluent English. He comprehends English. Like, this guy, he's trying to develop an American fan base. And with the way that he's been working, especially through the year 2025, he's going to be fan beloved in no time. I already really like this guy, and I've spoken about him on multiple different occasions on this channel. I think one of the most hardcore things that you can be going into the year 2026 as a UFC fan is a Melquizael Costa supporter, because I think that he has the world in his palms right now. As far as outside of the rankings guys go at 145 pounds, Melquizael Costa has it. And I think that he has what's required to make the top 15 and go beyond that as well. It's very clear that the UFC organization does agree as well, because they match made him with Dan Ige for that Houston card on February 21st. We're going to see how that one ends up going, but I think he fries Dan Ige personally. Randomly, we do see Dan pull a rabbit out of the hat and score a knockout over some guy who challenges from outside of the rankings or close to the rankings whenever he was outside of the top 15. I just think that Melquizael Costa is too good. I would favor Melquizael Costa to beat Dan Ige on the basis of momentum alone. Ige coming off of a loss to Patricio Pitbull, it's Melquizael Costa's time to become ranked. And they could have given him David Onama, which is a tougher fight. I think the UFC knows what they stand to gain in having Melquizael Costa as a ranked guy in this division, so they're sharing his odds by giving him what I wouldn't consider to be a complete softball, but stylistically a favorable matchup for him. This is my guy, and you know that if you've been watching the channel for a little bit. Next, we have Neil Magny to discuss, and we're also talking about Uros Medic on another list that I had just released of like UFC fighters who are mad tough as role players within the 170-pound division. Uros Medic is a role player in the sense that He is there to produce big KO highlights that either are scored on him or he scores on other people at the top of the prelims on these fight night cards. Neil Magny is a staple prelim fighter on fight nights. He can even headline an event too. He's there to test the aptitude of welterweights outside of the rankings. If you are meant for the top 15, you glass Neil Magny, or you just technically beat him in the grappling, which is hard to do because he's very good. Anywhere the fight may take place, Neil Magny is well versed there. In the stand up, he's got some solid kickboxing, very good grappling, and he has a lot of survivability too. So if you do blow your wad early on into a fight, thinking that you can finish him very quickly, you're mistaken, because he's going to likely survive this onslaught if you don't come with some serious heat, and he'll end up beating you, and he'll finish you too. And that's the craziest part about Neil Magny, is that he's always been this way. He's the king of the apex for this reason. He stands on business more than anyone, in the sense that he will take a fight with anybody in this division, whether they be a debutant from another promotion, whether they be a surging prospect, KO guys, submission threats. He's never been easy work for anyone who wasn't built different. You have to be a special fighter in order to dust Neil Magny or to beat him in general. This guy has 37 UFC fights. 37 UFC fights with 24 wins. And yeah, that's not the best KD, but he's maintained his place on the roster since the year 2013. And we've seen in the last 3 years, the UFC has kind of been acting as this revolving door for guys that are around his age. They come and they go. Dudes who have been in the UFC and had shorter tenures than 5 years even, making an exit from the promotion. There's a very good reason why Neil Magny still has a spot at the table. It's because he himself is very good. And he has the potential to set a record before he does retire. Jim Miller has the most UFC wins. And I think that Neil Magny is only 3 fights off from being the guy who holds the record for the most wins in the UFC. This is my dog. Every single time that Neil Magny gets scheduled to fight, most of the time it's up against very stiff competition, but I'm always prompted to pick Neil Magny. Whenever I don't, I usually regret not picking him because he finds some way to win. This is just one of those guys who I always perform heavy mental gymnastics to justify siding with, for no other reason aside from the fact that I just like him. He's one of my favorite fighters ever. And you guys may call this glazing, but whenever you do look at how Michael Morales, Carlos Prates, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and Ian Gary all went through Neil Magny in order to enter the rankings, he kind of built the welterweight division into what it's become today. None of those guys would have had any grounds to advance through the division and call for bigger fights without having beaten Neil Magny in whatever way they were able to do it. He's given like half of those fighters that I just named career highlights. And in the middle of losing to those guys who were the best in the world, he still was able to get his own highlights. Neil Magny is a highly skilled gatekeeper who's grandfathered the modern era of the welterweight division in the UFC. And that's the reason why he is one of my favorite fighters of all time. Now we have Alexandre Pantoja to discuss. This was a dude who everyone dragged for being active and putting on wars at a certain point. The Alexandre Pantoja co-main event was like a punishment for fans to have to endure before whatever main event would come after it, you know? And I don't think that was at all fair to him, because if you really did pay attention to these fights, they've always been so high level. Alexandre Pantoja fights like it's the Cell games every single time. Like he's competing in the Tournament of Power. And getting more into this dude's backstory and finding out exactly his motivations for fighting, and seeing how family oriented he is, how much he just loves the people that he's responsible for, and how he fights for them and puts them at the forefront of his career, it just made me like him a lot more. Back whenever he couldn't speak English, talking about how his pops neglected him and how he became world champion just to get acknowledgement from his father, being vulnerable and crying about that inside of the UFC octagon as he holds the belt over his head. This paired with the fact that he's never ducked smoke from anyone in the entire division, lapped the division even, and made it so Steve Erceg, off of one win over Matt Schnell, and Tatsuro Taira, a debuting guy from Ryzen, were the dudes who were on his radar because he had beaten everybody else. Never acted better than any challenge that was ahead of him. Joshua Venn beat Brandon Royval in the featured fight of UFC 317, and then he goes on and he beats Kai Kara France on that same night, stays in the octagon to face off with the dude. Acknowledged the success of Kyoji Horiguchi. Tatsuro Taira wanted to fight with them in Japan. This guy is really about that action. He's calling for a return in Q3 of 2026, post dislocating his elbow, doesn't need surgery. I saw this man doing weighted exercises with a cast on 2 days after the event ended, and then he's back in the gym sparring as of last week. He has the coolest custom shorts as well, And he's a Brazilian fighter who actually took the time to learn English. And I really do appreciate that, because through learning English, you're able to communicate your backstory a lot better and share more poignant details of your upbringing and goals in the UFC to a wider audience other than just the Brazilian fan base that you came up fighting around. So I actually do appreciate whenever these foreign fighters do learn English. No matter how articulate they are to begin with, it counts for a lot whenever it's concerning like my fandom. It shows that they're serious about getting this cheddar, because with knowing English comes the opportunity for brand deals. Hinata Moicano is locked in with like Kraken or something, that crypto company, and he showed up on the scene not speaking a lick of English. And he said that he got hip playing Call of Duty, talking shit with people in public lobbies before the game started. Alexandre Pantoja is that man. I hope that he recaptures the title. I am not ready for him to go out sad. Now we're going to be talking about Dricus Du Plessis. Dricus Du Plessis, this is another guy who, if you've been following the channel for a long time, you know that I really do enjoy watching this man fight. People always make jokes about how he's the highest level, low level fighter. And I mean, I never thought that this was true, and I always wanted to combat that narrative with the one that I push through my channel, which is that he's unorthodox, but he's not a goofy fighter. But I mean, all the same, his finishes are very funny to watch. Like Trevin Giles versus Dricus Du Plessis was a hilarious fight to watch. And even on the Pretoria regional scene, I went back and I watched his fights from South Africa whenever he was still a welterweight. There was one finish where Dricus Du Plessis tied up with this guy in the clinch, and he pulled guard, leaping forward into the guy's arms, and he hyperextended his knee and broke his leg, and that's how he scored a TKO. And I think that was for a belt even. Robert Whittaker, the punch that downs Robert Whittaker. Whittaker's reaction to getting hit the way that he did against Dricus Du Plessis. Funny stuff. Israel Adesanya pointing down, signaling let's stand and bang like Max Holloway. And then Dricus Du Plessis obliging for all of 2 punches, shooting the takedown, and then immediately choking Izzy. Dricus Du Plessis breaking Sean Strickland's nose, and then like telling him how to readjust it, and telling him that he was like adjusting it the wrong way in the cage as they were fighting. DDP versus Brunson being him getting smashed in side control all the way up until he decides that he's just had enough, escaping from the position through bridging, and then beating the hell out of Derek Brunson. I love Dricus Du Plessis. This is one of my favorite fighters of all time. Whenever we're talking about the subject matter itself, watching this dude fight is always an event. Again, very clean custom shorts. Everyone hated on him until his time came, and he just stayed down the whole time. Took the opportunities as they came. He was the heel for a long time. Beat fan favorites like Darren Till. Beat Robert Whittaker. Became undeniable. Fought Adesanya. Took the belt off of Sean Strickland, who people were warming up to at the time of him challenging DDP in his first title defense. This guy, Dricus Du Plessis, is the best middleweight champion ever behind Khamzat Chimaev. The way the power rankings go is it's like Khamzat, Dricus, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland, and Anderson Silva are like interchangeable. And then we have Alex Pereira probably at number 6. This guy is super jacked in athletics. I said before on another occasion whenever I was talking about fighter builds, I do believe that Dricus Du Plessis is one of the most aesthetic fighters on the UFC roster. Whenever we're factoring in mass and proportions as well, he's also proof that cardio is for wimps. Dricus Du Plessis is one of them, one of my favorite fighters of all time, no question. This is another fighter that I speak about pretty frequently, and I mean, I haven't really given a certain block of time in a video discussing. I guess I have, but not really in depth, so I will do it right now. Deiveson Figueiredo, but flyweight Deiveson Figueiredo. Back whenever he called himself Daiko, before Deus de Guerra, and he like dyed that little God of War Kratos red insignia in his hair. He was making other flyweights he would scrap with poop themselves. And this was for like 3 years, all the way up until 2020. 2017 through 2020, Deiveson Figueiredo was an absolute menace. Flyweight Mike Tyson in the sport of MMA, if you will. He made Jiu-Jitsu cry for his mama. Like, he required a whoopee and a binky. He got hit so hard in that fight and choked out so violently. Deiveson Figueiredo in his heyday at 125 pounds demonstrated some of the most potent finishing capabilities that this weight class has ever seen, ever. And I think that it will be this way up until the end of time. Deiveson Figueiredo at flyweight was different. And the reason why he was able to style on these guys so hard is because he had such stark physical advantages over the guys that he was match made with, because he's always been a bantamweight. I don't know how he was able to make this weight cut, but for all the time that he was able to, he was reaping the benefits. And this was all the way up until the Brandon Moreno quadrilogy. Things kind of like took a dump after that. That's likely just because prime Brandon Moreno at this weight class was something different too. But I mean, both of these guys probably lost years of their lives in those 4 fights that they shared with each other. They were absolute classics, even though at the time, since I was newer into the sport, I didn't really appreciate what we were watching. In part because I just wanted to see Deiveson and Figueiredo continue to steamroll other contenders in this division. But I mean, if we're talking about fighter backstories, this guy Deiveson Figueiredo has lived 8 different lives leading up to becoming a pro UFC fighter. He was a cattleman. His father owned a ranch where they herded water buffalo or something weird like this. He was a bricklayer. He was a hairdresser, and that's the reason. Like, there's actually like photos of this man giving women perms. He was a sushi chef. There's like an UFC embedded episode where he's like preparing dragon rolls for his family. And then he became a UFC fighter. And I think that there's like other titles as well. Like he used to be like a motorcycle taxi driver. A bunch of different odd jobs that he was taking just in passing so he can make the stream of fighting work. And I'm glad that we did get to see him hold a belt and defend it in his prime. It was really something to witness. Deiveson Figueiredo, he capitalized on a period of flyweight division where there was basically a power vacuum. Henry Cejudo had withdrawn from the rankings because he retired in 2020, vacating the bantamweight and flyweight titles. Deiveson Figueiredo was right there. There were no modern flyweights on the rise that made sense to challenge for the title, except for Deiveson Figueiredo. He was like the first one. And he was kind of a peek into how things would change moving forward as the division moved into an entirely different era. Next, we're going to be talking about Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria, who I just saw a headline of today, he was leaving the courtroom in his custody battle against his ex-wife, smiling very big, cheesing his ass off because of the fact that he said that he's going to be seeing his daughter very soon. If all goes well with the custody battle, I was talking to this guy in an Xbox Live party like a few months ago, and he was talking about you gotta be like a real piece of garbage to not get some type of leniency from the divorce court in the custody battle whenever it's concerning a man wanting to be part of his child's life. Like you gotta be trapping out the bando or something, or like beating the hell out of your BM or something like this in order for there to be no sympathy shown to you as a father who just wants to be there for his kids. And that would make sense that she would lie on my boy and make it seem like he was like physically abusive towards her so that she could have her way, and being able to bar him completely out of the life of one of his children. Even though like for some reason it's totally cool that he sees his son, she wants complete access to his daughter, and for him to not be able to see that, she's using the kid as like a chess piece over this man to exploit him for some reason. I'm not really sure even why. Maybe just because she's like scorning him for the fact that their relationship didn't work, and it was because he was trying to get his meat licked on Instagram in the DMs. Which, I mean, dude, it's like, that's your guys' business. I just really care about this man coming back to the UFC octagon and fighting. But I mean, this is like my second favorite fighter ever. And I haven't really been talking about his accomplishments as of late, just because I feel like we all kind of possess a baseline understanding that, I mean, this is the guy right now. Islam Makhachev is there and he's cool, but like, Ilia Topuria, man. Ilia Topuria. I feel like there's a specific group of people who back Armin, guys who are even rallying behind Gaethje or Paddy as people who could rival the abilities of Ilia Topuria in potential matchups. But like, if you really know, it's Ilia right now, dude. This is Ilia's time, and I hope that we don't lose too much of his prime to the fact that he is trying to resolve some family stuff. But with everything that he's accomplished, this may just be like a strategic downtime period for him, just to be able to get his ducks in a row, his bearings straight, if you will, to be able to produce more dreamlike KO sequences and to do more impossible things by our standard metrics, like the performances he just spent the last 2 years putting on. He needs to come back, and I don't doubt that he will. I think that we're not going to see an interim title defense at 155 pounds. Gaethje and Paddy are going to do their thing at UFC 324, and then Ilia Topuria will come back and he'll knock out whoever wins that McDonald's Happy Meal toy between the two of those fighters. And that's because, I mean, dude, call this glaze. I'm going to make up for lost time. I'm going to glaze Ilia Topuria. I think he could slump certain 185-pound fighters. Like, there's definitely a few middleweights that I could name right now that would get knocked out by Ilia Topuria. Tresean Gore, Hidalgo Vieira, Edmund Shabazian, Armin Petrosky, Jordan Santos, Eric Mechanico, Cody Brundage. I think that he could even knock out Armin Petrosian, Shara Bullet, Abu Smagomedov, Brad Tavares, Dustin Stoltzfus, Marc-Andre Barrio. I could go on. I won't, but I could. But I won't. I still don't understand exactly why he has so much power, It's definitely down to mechanics and the way that he is throwing these shots. That paired with just latent God-given ability. But I'm not sure what the exact ratio is between ability that can't be developed through strength training and that's just naturally possessed, and form that was developed through training. He's technically perfect. He can do anything. He seems to have like max attributes in every single category, right? Durability, he's displayed durability. Heart to be able to get back into fights whenever he does drop them. Counter wrestling, offensive striking, offensive grappling as well, submissions, knockouts. This guy, he's like the perfect fighter. All of that compounded into a 5'7" body. And that's the reason why I never once doubted this man's ability to do anything that he said that he would do. He said he would knock out Volkanovski. I was like, you know what? I don't know why, but I trust this dude. After the Emmett performance, I was like, you know, this guy, he's special. Multiple 10-8s on the feet in a 5-round fight. Who does that? Like, who does that? It's not even like he couldn't have put away Josh Emmett. It's just that would have required him to pocket exchange, and in 50-50 with Emmett, you run the risk of getting knocked out. Most of the time it is guys opting to grapple with Josh Emmett, and whenever he does get finished, most of the time it's by submission. Ilia Topuria just beat this man to a 1/4 inch of his life. So after that happened, a more prime version of Josh Emmett, I think he was actually off of a win too, against like Calvin Kattar or something. I was like, you know, this guy has the makings of a varsity athlete. And so he said he would knock out Volk, and I'm like, you know, I'm gonna choose to believe him. And he does it. Said he would knock out Max, who historically has had the best chin at 145-pound history, off of a amazing knockout over Justin Gaethje. I just chose to believe him again, and he produced the highlight. Said he would knock out Charles, and I feel like that was kind of a step down in terms of like it's kind of seen the outcome of UFC 317 as an inevitability, but I had no idea that any of those 3 highlights would be as violent as they actually ended up being, or that Ilia Topuria would look as perfect as he did in all 3 of those performances. People talk about, oh, well, it was arguable that Max Holloway was up in the first 2 rounds of the fight. But it doesn't matter, does it? If he was getting his guts scooped off of the floor of the canvas by the end of the 3rd, right? This is like my dude. As far as active UFC fighters on the roster, Ilia Topuria is a guy who, I mean, he's my GOAT. This is my GOAT. My dream for him is to become the first UFC triple champion. I want him to challenge Islam Makhachev up a weight class at 170 pounds. I don't think there's a question as to whether or not he would be able to finish that fight via KO. He's collected 2 belts already, and it was like no sweat off of his forehead. I think that the 3rd one, it would require him to dig deep, but it's very possible for him to do it. But whenever we're talking about all time, my favorite fighter ever, it's gotta be Francis Ngannou. And I thought that it would be like around here, but I inverted the camera, so you can go get it. My homeboy who I be meeting up at the gym with to lift weights, he gave me probably the best gift that I've ever received in my life, on the basis of like somebody finding out about my personal interests and then going shopping for me. It's my dog Aaron. He's going to be competing mixed martial arts very soon for Up Next Fighting. I will be promoting his bouts on the channel whenever he does get them signed. Francis Ngannou, bro. He gave me a Francis Ngannou Series 1 action figure, and like this Francis Ngannou was wearing like the Reebok era shorts. I was totally into collecting like WWE action figures as a kid. So this is super significant to me. He gave this to me and let me hold it, bro. This is from the night that he had knocked out Cain Velasquez, Francis Ngannou. I about like did a backflip right there. As I fucking just drop it and it explodes on the ground. Nah, man. Francis Ngannou, I can't even exactly communicate what him and his career did for my fandom of the UFC. I would not be a fan of mixed martial arts if Francis Ngannou was not a human who drew breath on this planet. And that's because my first event that I've ever watched live was Gaethje versus Ferguson. And on that card, we got to see Francis Ngannou fight with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And this was me having only seen knockouts on UFC 3 as I was playing the game with my friends a lot. Jairzinho Rozenstruik got absolutely melted by a blitz combination from Francis Ngannou, and he was slumped out cold in the corner of the octagon for like minutes on end. And I thought that we lost him. I genuinely thought that he had like flatlined right there because he just didn't move. He was having a staring contest with the Moose Man in the corner of the cage. Like, I thought he was going to get up and start dancing like Squidward at the Krusty Krab talent show if he did come back to life. And aside from this moment, I immediately took a liking to this fighter and was like, okay, so does he just do this to everyone? And like, yeah. He has the funniest KO reel in MMA history. I have a video that's out right now where I rank all of his KO highlights. Every single UFC fight from Francis Ngannou that ended in a highlight KO finish, I've ranked those fights in a comprehensive list on my YouTube channel. I just remember how much I would laugh at Dana White sharing the stat that Francis Ngannou hits as hard as a Ford Escort going as fast as it can. Think about how much force is delivered in the payload of that punch. If it's equivalent to a Ford Escort going as fast as it can. Let's just out of curiosity, let's actually like get more on that. A Ford Escort weighs roughly 2,200 pounds, 1,000 kilograms. Early compact models were about 2,500 pounds, 1,130 kilograms, and that was for like the sedan or the wagon. Let's look at the top speed now. If we're talking about the Mark I Ford Escort RS 1600, that car could reach a top speed of 113 miles per hour. I think that has to be exaggerated too, but if there's no discrepancy between those two amounts of applied force, we're talking about punches that are capable of removing arms from people's torsos. And even whenever he wasn't delivering these KO highlights, because towards the end of his career he was battling leg injury stuff, namely in his fight against Ciryl Gane before he did leave the promotion, he relied more heavily on a wrestling game plan, and we'd been seeing him making strides into turning into a proper grappler before then. In the Stipe Miocic rematch, Stipe was able to beat him in the first time by shooting blast double legs across the cage that he wasn't able to defend. He developed wrestling in his title rematch, was able to get the belt off of Stipe because he could stop the takedown. Did the same thing against Ciryl Gane, and he even employed an offensive wrestling game plan in that fight to win. That was a very masterful performance that Francis Ngannou put on with a torn ACL, I think in his left knee. So, I mean, yeah, this is my favorite fighter of all time. It really does suck that we didn't get to see more performances of his in the UFC while he was in his prime as an MMA fighter, but we did get some clips from PFL with him in his fight against Renan Ferreira. Dominated. He did get to box, too. And, I mean, he made his money and he got out. And that's exactly what I wanted to see for him, no matter how those fights ended up going. He took it to Tyson Fury in his boxing debut. Had never put on the gloves before. Ended up dropping Tyson Fury in that fight. There's a photo that you can find on the internet of Francis Ngannou standing over Tyson Fury after he had dropped him. Even if he did get flatline KO'd by Anthony Joshua in his next boxing match, he got his bread. He good. This is my GOAT. Of all time, Francis Ngannou is my favorite fighter ever. So gentlemen, in the comment section, please do let me know who are your favorite fighters of all time. If you did make it to this point in the video, please do make sure to also like, comment, and subscribe. I will catch you boys in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Peace out.